Welcome to the Safari Yangu Podcast, where we share our stories unapologetically, experiences that shaped us and experiences that continue to shape us. On today's discussion, I want us to talk about something that might be controversial, and that is what about the boy child, rethinking empowerment in Kenya for the boy child and generally. And today we will dive into this conversation that pop ups every time when we talk about women or girl child empowerment in Kenya. The question that always finds its way to either if it's a discussion you're having or maybe on a comment section somewhere, either on YouTube, on TikTok, on all these social media platforms. The question is, na boy child je? Like, what about the boy child? What about the boy child? Yes. So has the boy child been forgotten, or is it an assumption? Is the empowerment scale unbalanced? And if it is, what are we doing about it? Or is anyone actually addressing this? So, or are we even dealing with deeper issues that need all of us to actually look into it and unpack them? So today we are going to talk about this in a very honest way and from my perspective. And I hope you can also chime in your perspective under my comment sections on social media for the Safari Yangu podcast. So before we even get started, I would love to give a personal story. When I started my career in the nonprofit sector a few years back, very early on, I was posted to a very remote area in Kenya, West Pokot, to go and work there. There was this women empowerment program that was running there, and it was such a good program. They were rescuing girls from early marriage and FGM. That's the context. And they would offer training, formal training for these girls. Some of them had not been able to finish school, so it's like they were being given a new lease of life so that they could finish school and be able to educate themselves and maybe their families and their own children. And I got a chance to actually talk to some of these girls, and most of them had actually given birth at the age of 14 or very early on. By 20, you'd find like somebody has 2 kids, another has 3, and something like that. But if you move to the context of urban areas, that's not the same. So in that case for West Pokot, that's a very good case study I want us to discuss. So what happened was the girls, they would stay there for a period of 6 months when we were running this project, and it was so nice. They would be economically empowered. They are given the skills that to get started in life and something like that. And it was like sort of in a boarding setting, and sometimes they would be given the granted permission to go home and then come back like a week later and something like that. And then later on you'd realize that there were cases of pregnancy. And what happened, we used to talk about reproductive health with the girls there in West Pokot. We would talk about reproductive health, how to you like the contraceptives, issues like that, like for example how you could do safe sex and not get children and things like that. So when they came back, we would have this discussion, because the idea of the program was they are being helped so that they acquire their skills, they get started somewhere in life so that they can be able to be in a better position, because initially that's not where they would have been. And so I would ask the girls, so what happened? What went wrong? And the more I had these discussions with the girls who ended up being pregnant, because one of the conditions of the program was that pregnancy, it's something that you should think about later on. They were not advocating for girls to get pregnant at that point, because they're being rescued, they're being given a new lease of life. So I would ask, why are you falling pregnant? And then they'll tell us, like, when I go back to the community, the men in our community are not empowered. And then they will give you like, this is how the men in our community think. And as we continue this conversation, you'd see why I'm giving this example. So they would tell you, this is why it happened, because there was all these issues about, they tell us we can't maybe use protections, e.g. like condoms, because if you do that, you are considered I don't know whether to say the word or I'll be gagged. You're considered like wewe ni msichana huko kwa mataa. Yes. So So it means that the girls are going back to a community where the men in their lives, the men they would probably end up again getting married to or spending their lives with, they're not empowered in such a way, or they hold on to those traditional norms and cultural beliefs that they've always held on to. So at some point, for me, I used to wonder, eventually, does it make such a big difference to have this empowerment program for the girls and then not for the boys? It was definitely important, but empowerment in that context of, even when you think about the aspect of reproductive health alone, or the cultural beliefs that people hold in places like, especially those remote areas and rural settings, or those people who have like these very solidified cultural beliefs. Yes, that's the point I'm talking about. So when you think about girl child empowerment in the context of now West Pokot at that point, I think first, apart from the sexual reproductive health one, it was very important. It was very important because these girls came from a community where, like, either they are married off early, they're not given a chance to education and stuff like that. But then now when you look at it now, eventually from the aspect of the boy child, then what happens if you don't empower the boy child in that community too? It feels like you'll bring up very empowered women and men who are not empowered, and I think it kind of tips the scale. And that's what I want us to have that discussion today. So for many years though, girls in Kenya faced extreme disadvantages. There was, now as I talked about in that example, there's early marriage, lack of schooling, there's gender-based violence, limited career opportunities, until when somebody started to do something about it. And a lot of organizations, especially in the non-profit sector, came up trying to work around that. That's how maybe that kind of opened now opportunities for girls, because people started advocating for young women to be able to actually access these opportunities. And I would tend to think that before this came up, men had all these opportunities to themselves to a larger extent, and women were kind of locked out. That's why everybody was up in arms. It became now a thing. It became a movement to empower the girl child. So a lot of interventions from the government itself, from non-governmental organization, community-based organizations, they focused on uplifting the girl child. And this was very necessary, and it also changed lives. That's why some of us are here, because somebody actually gave us a chance and believed in us. But as girls progress, then now, as I said, there's now that tipping of the iceberg or the scale. Like, the evolving challenge becomes, there's as boys began to face new challenges, some of them, there's an academic decline on their part, emotional suppression, unemployment pressure, violence, and most important, lack of mentorship, especially lack of mentorship. I do believe, like, as people have gone ahead to empower women and do all these things, they have provided a lot of mentorship. But when it comes to the men, I don't think the skills are balanced in that way. And so the boy child slowly may fall behind. And that's the discussion. That's why every time you say empower the woman, empower the girl child, somebody is out there asking, what about the boy? What about the boy? Because for a while now, in the last, I think maybe 10 years or so, men have literally fallen behind. And sometimes men don't feel seen. And I might not exactly know how, but because of the way I have seen a lot of people taking these discussions, and the way every time you mention girl child empowerment, the boy child is brought up in another way. So I think there must be some, discrepancy somewhere. So is it true, really, men? Is it true that the boy child has been forgotten? I would tend to think it's not as black and white as we would wish for it to be. That's what I would think. And my research and what I have come across is, as I said, there have been organizations that have definitely put in a lot of effort to empower women. But here's what research and observations show. In education, boys are dropping out as much or more than girls in some areas. When, in terms of mental health, men in Kenya have some of the highest rates of depression, substance abuse, and even suicide. But also, they're among the demographic that seek the least help. You see what I mean? And a lot of times when we talk about also discussions about mental health, women have community, women have support. And where do they get this support? Most of the times they get support from their own women. That, for example, the chamas that women have always had from Kitambo, they've formed as a community. Women know how to form community, but men rarely talk about their problems. Then there's the social pressure, like men are expected to man up, to show up in a certain way. Even when you are looking for a spouse, you're the same age with the man in your life, but you expect them to be up there in terms of financially, economically, and something like that. There could be a lot of expectations also laid on men. And also mentorship. Girls have a lot of spaces. As I said, a lot of organizations, the government, they have like put in a lot of effort in mentoring girls. And then boys, I don't think they have been given equal spaces. And this I don't think was by design. It's just maybe something that happened. And then now is when we feel like the big gap and we wonder what can be done, which is what we should be addressing, not making it look like it's a gender war. All girls have been empowered, boys have been left behind, blah, 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 blah. Yes. So, and then also role models. I feel like many boys grow up without like the presence of father figures or being shown the positive side of masculinity. If you look at a lot of platforms nowadays, when somebody gets a microphone, and I have a microphone, but a lot of times some men, when they get behind a microphone, especially the red-pilled content kind of people, instead of pushing out positive masculinity, they push out like negative masculinity, which means that if you're a young boy out there listening to them, the kind of things you get to absorb. And also this cuts across even with women. Sometimes the kind of content we consume, it can determine how we actually turn out or how we are modeled around ourselves. So yeah, yes, boys are facing, they're facing some of these challenges. But does that mean that the girl child should be de-empowered so that they can be at the same level with the boy? I don't think that's what should happen. Empowering one side does not mean dimming the other. That's what I would choose to see it. I would choose to see it as, now that we have identified the gap, what should we do? So one reason this topic is a bit sensitive is because empowerment is often perceived like a competition. Or as I said, every time you go online and there's this discussion somewhere, it's like, but heavy. But what if we stopped seeing it like competition and started seeing it in the way, perceiving it as, if girls win, also boys win. Instead of you seeing it, if girls win, boys are losing. If we talk about women, we are attacking men. It's the same thing with also something like gender-based violence. Women are very vocal about some of these things. When they start talking about gender-based violence and things like femicide, then you find some man on a comment section who will be like, but what about the guy who was killed by their wife or something like that? But we can talk about these two people at the same time without making it look like a competition, because men and women both face gender-based violence. And maybe it's time for men to also stand up and advocate for other men and talk about these issues. Your silence doesn't get us anywhere. And now, when you are silent about some of these things that men face and you don't talk about it, and then when a woman now talks about it because it has happened to another woman, and now you are now attacking this other person because you didn't speak about your issue. Speak about, I feel like, from my personal perspective, if we all spoke about the issues you are facing, it's very easy even for women to start now advocating for men, because men are being vocal about the issues that affect the men, because they're the ones who understand, because it affects them. That's why women are always vocal. If something happens, they're out here up in arms. But empowerment is not a zero-sum game. What we are really dealing with is the fear, the unhealed trauma, emotional gaps, generational expectations, and changing gender roles. Men are asking for support, not because women should not be empowered, but because they also need direction. I feel like growing up, now that I'm now all grown, but growing up, it's like I'm putting myself in my brother's shoes, okay? The same way he didn't know much about the world, the same way I didn't know. We were all being given a platform to learn. What if we looked at it like that? Like, instead of thinking like I'm in competition with my brother, it's thinking about it in the context of me and my brother are in this world. We don't know anything, and now we need to be nourished. We need to be told what to do. We need to be given a sense of direction. If you view it like that, because I mean, the same women are the same women who are giving birth to these men too. So I think actually the biggest issue here is the competition. If we stopped seeing it as a competition, but as something that applies to both, like cuts across to both genders, then it will actually be a lot easier. So what would real meaningful boy child empowerment look like in Kenya today? And I would want to pose these especially for the men. I think emotional intelligence spaces for boys. Teach boys that it's okay to feel, speak, heal, and be vulnerable. I feel for the longest, as I said, women have had spaces where we listen to each other, even from the very basic level. If I'm going through something, I call my friend and we talk and we're like, oh, this is how I feel. Somebody hurt my feelings, and I vent and I rant and I do whatever. By the time I'm done, I feel so good. But men, I don't think men have had those types of safe spaces, mostly because first, it's not about women now. It's even them themselves. They've not created these spaces for themselves. It's like they would rather bottle up their emotions and not talk about these issues. But in essence, when you speak to each other, man to man, because you'll actually utagundua whatever you are going through, your fellow man is going through, or somebody in your community is going through the same. And the more you speak about these things, the more you make it okay. And that's now even in the context of mental health. The more you normalize, like, it's okay, come and tell me like whatever you're going through, and we will find a solution, or we will laugh about it or talk about it. It's like you have offloaded your burden. And then there needs to be positive mentorship in the context of masculinity. As I talked about, like, the red pill content, I feel like some of the reasons why men are not empowered in the right way, it could be because of some of these things. Mentor each other. This is me. I'm telling men. I know maybe you don't want to be told by a woman what you need to do, but being a woman who has even nephews, or at some point who would have children who are even male, I would want my kids to grow up in a space where they know what positive masculinity looks like, what it looks like to handle things a certain way, whether it's me telling them or it's the men in their lives telling them, but I'll try to do my part. So I'm challenging guys, like, start reinforcing positive masculinity, especially in the lives of young boys. And then, like, I think this one now it cuts across from us as women, the government and government organizations, men, anyone who can be able to open up education and skills programs that actually empower boys who drop out from schools, or teach them technical skills, entrepreneurship, digital skills, and all these. And for me, I would say, in my own small way, I have played a part in that. I have been running an organization that teaches people skills, and we have worked with boys who have had big dreams, mentored them, and you see the kind of things that they are able to achieve. So imagine if you have that kid, that boy child in your community who is going through stuff and they're not even able to complete school. If they're given a second chance, the same way girls are being given a second chance by these programs, if we put up structures that actually create such avenues for them, then at the end of the day, the boy child atakuwa ameachwa behind because somebody cares. So men, women, government, community-based organizations, non-profits, this is for you. This is a challenge for you. It's not just about the women, because if you empower the women again and you leave the boys behind, who's gonna marry the girls? Who's gonna marry those empowered women? It's still the same men. So we need to have a balance in society. It's not a competition. Open up space for men too. Men deserve deserve those programs too. Men deserve mentorship. Look at it in the aspect of in a family. Would you give one child education and leave the other one? You see, yes. And then I have had this conversation with my male friends. We talk about like there's this idea of I have seen also the discussion of single moms online. A lot of guys complain, oh, single moms are doing a bad job, how they bring up their kids, especially their male children. But my question to you is, you as a man, maybe this woman was unlucky because of one circumstance or the other, like maybe their baby daddies left them, or maybe something just tragic happened. But you as a man in society, if you've made this observation, what, for example, have you done to help the situation? You don't have to be the father of this child. You could be a neighbor. You could be an uncle. You could be a brother. How often do you reach out to this mother, maybe to reinforce, to have that positive fatherhood figure sort of conversations with these kids in who belong to single moms? You see, because I have seen single moms being castigated online, but as men, what are you doing about it? Are you the ones who, why do you keep calling out single mothers and leave out maybe, for example, if it is in the context of a deadbeat dad, why are you not calling out that deadbeat dad, but you keep laying the blame on the mother who is already the parent who is showing up? That's a really good question that you need to answer. And then you need to also have conversations that don't have blame. You need safe spaces where men can speak without being ridiculed or shamed. Like, allow yourselves to be vulnerable. And I know this must be tough for men, but allow yourselves to be vulnerable. And I feel like if from a very young age men are shown it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's not just about man up, then they'll become healthy even emotionally, and maybe we will reduce the cases, as we talked about the numbers, the cases of suicide and mental health issues and stuff like that, because from a young age boys feel like it's okay to sometimes have a bad day, and also to even talk about it. So these are some of the things you can actually do to empower young boys even as they grow up to become men. And then so how can men advocate for the boy child? The truth is, boy child empowerment cannot be driven by women alone. Men must take actually the front seat. This is mostly about men. I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. So here is what you can do as a man. You can talk openly about issues to do with something like mental health. You can mentor young boys in your community. You can challenge toxic masculinity when you see it. You can show up in schools, churches, online spaces, and advocate for other men and young boys. And also you can share your personal struggles so boys can learn what vulnerability looks like. Like if a grown-ass man comes here and they are vulnerable and they talk about their experiences, you show these small boys that oh wow, they can be vulnerable too. They can talk about their experiences. They can express it. So and then build community spaces, like show like if you have to go to, maybe if you open up like a space where maybe people come to watch football, but then after that you have sessions where you can talk about all these things you're talking about. Have clubs, initiate safe spaces, like for women, chamas, as I was saying, women have used Vitu Kama Chama to actually advocate for themselves and for each other. That's where they go to be so vulnerable. Now, apart with a cup of tea, they are telling each other what is happening maybe in their lives or the struggles they are going through, whether it's financial, it's relationships, whatever. There's usually nothing off the table. Like put everything here, we solve it, or we tell you our peace of mind, and then by the time you're leaving, you're fine. So men empowering boys is very powerful. As men, that's you need to show up, and not because women can't, but because boys need to see an empowerment modeled by men who understand their journey. As I said, we as women, we can play a part in boy child empowerment, but the biggest part and the most efficient is also men showing up for boys so that they can see this is what empowerment looks like from a male perspective, which is where even in families, there's the man and the way they lead their home and stuff like that. So It's not a war. Again, it's not a war. This is not a battle. It's about all of us. And as a woman, how can you show up? How can you show up? Women, yes, we have a role to play. As I said, they are our brothers, they're our cousins, they're our nephews, they are our sons, they're our husbands. So I think sometimes we as women, we might feel in the context of offering empathy. We need to offer empathy instead of defensiveness. We need to understand that men also face societal pressure. We shouldn't see men as these solid figures that they have everything figured out. The same way even you, kuna mtu alisema, we are also living the life for the first time. Yeah, that's the thing. Even men they're living life for the first time. You need to understand that. Raise sons with emotional literacy. Like, let them understand it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be like this. And if we do this communally, then we are going to raise people who feel like it's okay to talk about their issues, even if it's not you they're telling, but they're telling maybe their fellow men, and then they find ways to solve it. That's fine. And then you need to create spaces where men feel heard. Like, if a man comes to you, even if it's your husband, your brother, your cousin, are you making them feel like you don't listen, or are you giving them a space where they feel like, wow, she listened to me and now I'm feeling a lot better? So create spaces where men feel heard, and also encourage healthier conversations, not blame games. Yes, that's also part of empowering people. So I would choose to see empowerment as a form of collaboration. If all of us collaborated, it's the same way even when we talk about femicide. If you see people on comment sections, there's men who'll be there, they're like, I stand with women, I stand with women. Or even right now where people are putting purple profiles, there's men who are putting purple profiles, So that's it. That's how it's supposed to be. It's collaboration. See competition, which was my very, very first. That was what I said from the very beginning. And then this is not like a man versus women. It's not girl child versus boy child. It's not a competition. What we truly need, as I said, is collaboration. We need to have empowerment that is intentional, support that is balanced, conversations that are healing, and spaces where everyone thrives. Boys and girls deserve a fighting chance, both ways. As I said, if you have children, a boy and a girl, are you going to give one more chances than another one, or you're going to give them equal chances? You see, the same way you would do it in your own family, from a family unit, then that's what should go out here. Yes, thank you for joining me on today's important conversation. If you've ever asked what about the boy child, I hope this episode gives you context and deeper understanding. Empowering boys does not erase the empowerment of girls. We grow stronger together. So if this episode has value to you, please share it with somebody and leave a review, and follow Safari Yangu Podcast on our podcasting platforms. And also let me know what you think about boy child empowerment, and what you think we could do or we should do and we have not done. What are the gaps and how can we fill them so that we all work together hand in hand? Until the next one, bye.